The galaxy had learned to fear the silence of humanity. 50 years ago, the Krell hegemony, a predatory empire of slaving arthropods, had mistaken human expansion for weakness. They had firebombed the colony on Kepler 186F, harvested the population of Tau Ceti, and broadcasted the screams of the dying as a warning. They expected a plea for terms. They expected supplication. They received instead the Orion Mandate. It was not a declaration of war. It was a physics equation delivered as a promise. 3 days later, the Krell home star, Krell Prime, ceased to exist. It did not go supernova. It did not explode. It simply imploded, collapsing in on itself with physics-defying speed, dragging every planet, every moon, every orbital station, and the entire Krell armada, billions of souls, into a micro-singularity. The event was instantaneous, clean, and absolute. Humanity had unveiled the Care Singularity Cascade, the KSC. They had, in the chilling parlance of the time, unmade a system. Then came the second broadcast, delivered to every species on every frequency. We desire peace. We will not be aggressors, but we will finish any war started against us. The Krell system is our testament. Attack us and face obliteration. The galaxy witnessed, and the galaxy learned. Now, 50 years later, that silence was a suffocating blanket. Humanity had retreated, building a border of quiet, watchful defense stations. They were the galaxy's boogeyman, the quiet neighbor who had proven they would burn the whole town down if a single spark landed on their lawn. Elias Thorne felt that silence in his bones. He was a warden, third class, stationed on Aegis Point, the outermost bastion of human space. It was less a fortress and more a tripwire, balanced precariously on the edge of the Kylos Nebula, the territory of the enigmatic and deeply isolationist Vought Scar. Aegis Point was a construct of gray, utilitarian metal and oppressive quiet. The air scrubbers hummed a low, constant E-flat that vibrated in the teeth. The light was always recycled, always a flat 5,000 Kelvin, casting no true shadows and offering no warmth. Elias lived in the simulation pod, his only real escape. He was running Scenario 749 Delta. Vought Scar, geode, ship crosses the treaty line, claiming navigational error. His response was, as always, surgical. He deployed non-lethal null-field interceptors, hailed the ship on every known Vought Scar frequency, which were mostly light-based resonance patterns, and shadowed it, his weapons cold, until it retreated. He passed. He always passed. The simulation AI simply logged. Pass. Mandate UPHD. You're going to wear out the capacitors in that pod, Warden. A voice, sharp as broken ceramic, cut through his debrief. Elias sat up, rubbing his eyes as the pod hissed open, spilling him back into the reality of the station's sterile command deck. Captain Eva Rostova stood over him, her uniform perfectly pressed, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun that highlighted the exhaustion etched around her eyes. Eva had been a child on Tau Ceti. She had been one of the few survivors, hidden in a maintenance duct by her mother. She had seen the Krell. She had seen the unmaking. Simulation is the only place I get to fly anymore, Captain, Elias said, stretching. The null-field ships, like his personal interceptor, the Icarus, were designed for stealth and observation. They were shadows, not spears. Good, Eva replied, her gaze fixed on the main star chart. Flying means we've failed. Our job here is to sit, to watch, to be the warning. The star chart was a vast, 3D hologram dominating the circular bridge. 99% of it was the familiar, mapped territory of the Terran Alliance. The last 1% was a swirling, dark blue maelstrom, the Kylos Nebula, and emanating from it, like spiders testing a web, were the faint energy signatures of the Vought Scar. They were a species of crystalline-based life forms, religious zealots who worshipped order and structure. They believed entropy, the slow, chaotic decay of the universe, was the ultimate sin. They built against the void. Their ships were not manufactured. They were grown, fractal, and geometric, seemingly immune to standard sensors. They're pushing again, Eva said, magnifying a sector of the border. A new Vought Scar signature had appeared. A new lattice construct. Third one this month. They're testing the line. It's religious observation, Captain. Their season of conversion, Elias offered, sipping a bulb of nutrient paste. They're reclaiming chaotic space. One man's religion is another's casus belli, Eva muttered. The Krell thought it was their divine right to uplift us into slavery. A shimmer in the air beside them resolved into a pillar of pure cobalt light. It coalesced into a humanoid shape, flickering like a gas flame, its features indistinct. This was Observer Zill, the ambassador or perhaps jailer from the Signian Conclave. The conclave were beings of pure energy, ancient and aloof, who had appointed themselves the galaxy's historians. After the unmaking, Zil had appeared on Aegis Point. It never spoke unless spoken to. It simply watched. "The Vatskar do not recognize your mandate, Captain." Zil's voice resonated, not in their ears, but directly in their minds, a sound like harmonic chimes. "They call it the entropy heresy. They believe your KSC weapon was the ultimate sin, an acceleration of the Void's victory." "They're welcome to their beliefs," Eva snapped, irritated by Zil's presence. "As long as they keep them on their side of the nebula." Elias looked at Zil. "Do you believe that, observer, that we're heretics?" Zil's form brightened slightly. "The Conclave does not believe. We recorded the Krell's aggression. We recorded your colony's demise. We recorded your disproportionate response. The Vatskar build, you destroy. These are facts. The morality is for matter-based life to debate." "We did what we had to do to survive," Elias said, a reflexive defense he'd been taught since birth. "As did the Krell," Zil chimed, without malice. "As do the Vatskar." Before Elias could retort, a klaxon, a sound no one on Aegis Point had ever heard outside of a drill, blared, cutting through the E-flat hum. It was a panicked, high-pitched shriek. "What is that?" Eva demanded, moving to her command chair. It's a colony distress beacon," the comms officer, Lieutenant Kenji Tanaka, said, his voice cracking. Kenji was young, barely 20, and this was his first deep space assignment. He looked at Elias, his mentor, with wide, terrified eyes. "It's from New Ararat." Elias felt the blood drain from his face. New Ararat, a small, terraformed garden world tucked into a fold of space just inside the treaty line. It was remote, isolated, and home to 80,000 civilians. "On screen," Eva commanded. The main viewer flickered, stability controls fighting against intense signal degradation. It wasn't a Vat-Skar ship. It wasn't a Krell survivor. The image that resolved was a live feed from the colony's central plaza. It was chaos. People were running, screaming, but they weren't being shot, they weren't being bombed. Sensors show a massive energy spike, Captain," Kenji stammered, "but it's not kinetic, it's biological, no, geological, I don't know what it is." The camera feed, held by a panicked civilian, panned across the plaza. The ground was moving, not shaking like an earthquake, but growing. A blue, crystalline structure like a geode's interior was sprouting from the permacrete, growing visibly, enveloping everything it touched. "It's a conversion phalanx," Elias whispered, recognizing the theoretical Vatskar weapon from intelligence briefings. "They're not invading, they're reclaiming." The camera focused on a man who had fallen. He screamed as the blue crystal, shimmering with an internal light, grew up his legs, shattering his bones with audible cracks. It was moving faster now, like frost on a window, but thick, three-dimensional. It covered his torso. He was still alive, still screaming as it reached his face. "Eva," Elias was breathless. "Get me a fleet mobilization," Eva ordered, her voice shaking for the first time. "Get me high command, now." On the screen, the camera operator was tackled, not by an alien, but by the ground itself. The camera fell, pointing sideways. The last image they saw, before the signal dissolved into static, was a statue of a human family in the plaza. The bronze figures were being rapidly encased in the shimmering, faceted blue crystal. The final, fragmented audio was not of explosions, but of 1,000 wind chimes mixed with the sound of a glacier calving, and the wet, muffled screams of 80,000 people being buried alive. Then silence, the oppressive, terrible silence of the Krell, but inverted. Observer Zil flickered, its light a cold, analytical blue. "The Vatskar have defied the mandate. The galaxy is now watching Warden Thorn, not the Vatskar. They are watching you." The klaxon stopped. The E-flat hum of the station returned, suddenly feeling fragile, like a thin shell of metal around a universe of horrors. The silence had been broken, and Elias knew with sickening certainty that the only thing worse than humanity's silence would be its answer. "Word count." Self-correction. The user requested 3,000 words per part. I must significantly expand this. I will restart and elaborate extensively. The galaxy had learned to fear the silence of humanity. It was a silence born of absolute, terrifying power. 50 standard years had passed since the Krell hegemony, an empire built on the carapaces of a dozen enslaved species, had made the fatal error of judging humanity by its chaotic, noisy radio signals. The Krell, a species of predatory, six-limbed arthropods, saw humanity's rapid, messy expansion as a sign of weakness, a weed to be pruned. They firebombed the colony on Kepler 186f, broadcasting the thermal screams as a lesson in obedience. They harvested the population of Tau Cetii, their chitinous blades carving a monument of human skulls in the colony's central plaza. They expected a plea for terms. They expected supplication. They received, instead, the Orion Mandate. It was not a declaration of war, not a diplomatic protest. It was a physics equation delivered as a promise, broadcast on every known frequency, subspace, and hyperspace simultaneously. It was just two sentences. We desire peace. We will not be aggressors, but we will finish any war started against us. The Krell leadership, assembled on their primary war moon, reportedly laughed at the transmission. 3 days later, the Krell home star, Krell Prime, ceased to exist. It did not go supernova. It did not explode. In a single, horrifying instant that violated known astrophysics, it imploded. It collapsed in on itself with physics-defying speed, its gravitational wave pulling every planet, every moon, every orbital factory, and the entire Krell armada of 20,000 warships into a micro-singularity. The event was instantaneous, surgically clean, and absolute. Humanity had unveiled the Care Singularity Cascade, the KSC, a weapon that did not destroy, it unmade. A second broadcast followed, identical to the first, but with a new postscript. The Krell system is our testament. Attack us and face obliteration. The galaxy witnessed, the laughter died, and the galaxy learned. Now 50 years later, that silence was a suffocating blanket. Humanity had retreated, pulling back to its core worlds, building a border of quiet, watchful defense stations. They became the galaxy's boogeyman, the quiet neighbor who had proven unequivocally that they would burn the whole town down if a single spark landed on their lawn. They were no longer participants in the galactic community. They were a hazard, a living warning. Warden Third Class, Elias Thorne, felt that silence in his bones. It was the low, E-flat hum of the life support on Aegis Point, the outermost bastion of human space. It was less a fortress and more a tripwire, a lonely sensor post balanced precariously on the edge of the Kylos Nebula, the opaque, swirling territory of the enigmatic and deeply isolationist Vat Skar. Aegis Point was a construct of gray, utilitarian metal, pressurized silence, and recycled air that tasted of ozone and filters. The light was always a flat, sterile 5,000 Kelvin, casting no true shadows and offering no warmth. It was a place designed not for living, but for waiting. Elias lived in the simulation pod, his only real escape. His body was lean, coiled, his movements precise from thousands of hours in simulated G-forces. He was running Scenario 749 Delta again, a Vat Skar geode ship, a massive crystalline vessel that sensors could barely track, crosses the treaty line, claiming navigational error by flashing incoherent light patterns. His response, as always, was surgical. In the sim, his hands danced over the holographic controls of his null-field interceptor, the Icarus. He deployed a squadron, not with weapons hot, but with sensor fields active. They hailed the geode on every known Vat Skar frequency, light pulses, resonance vibrations, gravimetric waves. He shadowed the Vat Skar ship, his weapons cold, his engines a bare whisper, until the simulation registered the aliens' retreat. Pass mandate UPHELD, 0 escalation. You're going to wear out the capacitors in that pod, Warden. A voice, sharp as broken ceramic, cut through his debrief. Elias sat up, the pod hissing open, spilling him back into the reality of the station's dim, circular command deck. Captain Eva Rostova stood over him. Her uniform was a canvas of perfect creases. Her dark hair was pulled into a severe bun that highlighted the exhaustion etched around her gray eyes. Eva had been a child on Tau Cetii. She had been one of the few survivors, hidden for 3 days in a maintenance duct by her mother, listening to the click-scrape of Krell claws. She had seen the Krell, and from a relief ship she had seen the absence where the Krell home star used to be. Simulation is the only place I get to fly anymore, Captain, Elias said, stretching, his joints popping in the low gravity. The Icarus is gathering dust in the hangar. Good, Eva replied, her gaze fixed on the main star chart, a vast 3D hologram that dominated the room. Flying means we've failed. Our job here is to sit, to watch, to be the warning. Every day we sit here and do nothing is a victory, Thorne, don't you forget it. The star chart was a comforting blue on one side, the mapped, secure territory of the Terran Alliance. On the other, it was a swirling, opaque vortex of dark blue and violet, the Kylo's nebula, and emanating from it, like spiders testing the edge of a web, were the faint, ghost-like energy signatures of the Vatskar. They were a species of silicon-based crystalline life forms. Their theology was their entire society. They worshipped order and structure. They believed entropy, the slow, chaotic decay of the universe, the heat death of stars, was the ultimate cosmic sin. They built against the void. Their ships were not manufactured. They were grown, fractal, and geometric, absorbing background radiation and particulate matter, making them nearly invisible to standard sensors. "They're pushing again," Eva said, her voice tight. She magnified a sector of the border, a red line that existed only on their maps. A new Vatskar signature had appeared. It was faint but massive. A new lattice construct. Third one this month. They're testing the line, seeing how far they can build there, their cathedrals, before we blink. "Intel says it's religious, Captain. Their season of conversion," Elias offered, joining her by the rail. He sipped a bulb of lukewarm, synthesized coffee. "They're reclaiming chaotic, unbuilt space for their gods." "One man's religion is another's casus belli," Eva muttered. "The Krell thought it was their divine right to uplift us into slavery. The Vatskar think it's their divine right to save us by turning us into crystal. I fail to see the practical difference." A shimmer in the air beside them, like heat haze over a desert, resolved into a pillar of pure cobalt light. It coalesced into a 7-foot humanoid shape, flickering like a gas flame, its features indistinct, its form shifting. This was Observer Zil, the ambassador from the Signian Conclave. The Conclave were beings of pure energy, ancient, aloof, and utterly neutral. They had appointed themselves the galaxy's historians. After the unmaking, Zil had simply appeared on Aegis Point. It never ate, never slept. It never spoke unless spoken to. It simply watched. Its presence was a constant, unnerving reminder that humanity was on probation. "The Vatskar do not recognize your mandate, Captain Rostova." Zil's voice resonated, not in their ears, but directly in their minds, a sound like harmonic, tuned chimes. "They call it the entropy heresy. They believe your KSC weapon was the ultimate sin. You did not just kill, you accelerated the Void's victory. You erased potential order." Eva visibly bristled. "They're welcome to their beliefs, as long as they keep them on their side of that nebula. Zil, you are here as an observer. Observe." Elias, ever the diplomat's son, looked at the energy being. "Do you believe that, observer, that we're heretics?" Zil's form brightened, a subtle shift from cobalt to a warmer violet. "The Conclave does not believe," we recorded. "We recorded the Krell's aggression. We recorded your colony's demise. We recorded your disproportionate and fascinating response. The Vatskar build, you destroy. These are facts. The morality is for matter-based life to debate." "We did what we had to do to survive," Elias said, the phrase a catechism drilled into him since birth. "They started it. We finished it." "As did the Krell from their perspective," Zil chimed, without malice, simply stating a recorded fact. "As do the Vatskar from theirs." Before Elias could formulate a retort to the being's infuriating logic, a new sound cut through the station's E-flat hum. It was not a drill. It was a sound no one on Aegis Point had ever heard live. A high-frequency, shrieking klaxon, the emergency beacon. "Deck, what is that?" Eva demanded, her hand instinctively going to the sidearm she never wore. She was already moving to her command chair. On the other side of the bridge, Lieutenant Kenji Tanaka, the comms officer, went pale. Kenji was young, barely 20, a prodigy from the Mars Flight Academy. This was his first deep space assignment, and Elias had taken him under his wing. Kenji looked at Elias, his eyes wide with a terror that was purely academically theoretical until this exact second. "Sir, Captain," Kenji's voice cracked. "It's a colony distress beacon, full spectrum, automated, code red." "Which colony? There's nothing out here but—" "It's from New Ararat, ma'am," Kenji whispered. Elias felt the synthesized coffee turn to acid in his stomach. New Ararat, a small, experimental garden world tucked into a fold of space just inside the treaty line. It was remote, isolated, and home to 80,000 civilians, mostly scientists and farmers. It was, by treaty, a demilitarized zone. A soft target. "On screen," Eva commanded, her voice now flat, all emotion compressed into pure, cold duty. The main viewer flickered, stability controls fighting against intense, localized gravimetric distortion. The signal was fragmented, delayed by minutes, sourced from a civilian street camera. It wasn't a VOT-S car ship. It wasn't a Krell survivor. The image that resolved was the central plaza of New Ararat. It was chaos. People were running, screaming, their mouths open in silent, delayed terror, but they weren't being shot. There were no explosions, no plasma scoring. Sensors show a massive energy spike, Captain, Kenji stammered, his fingers flying across his console. But it's not kinetic, it's biological? No, geological. The ground's resonant frequency is changing. I don't know what it is. The camera feed held by a panicked civilian panned wildly. The ground was moving, not shaking like an earthquake, but growing. A blue, crystalline structure shimmering with a cold, internal light was sprouting from the permacrete, growing visibly like frost on a window pane, but thick, three-dimensional, and fast. It was enveloping everything it touched. "My God," Elias whispered, "it's a conversion phalanx. They're not invading, they're reclaiming." It was a theoretical Vought-Eskar terraforming method, dismissed by High Command as theological fantasy. The camera focused on a man who had fallen, his leg trapped by a growth of the crystal. He screamed as the blue, faceted mineral, sharp as obsidian, grew up his legs, shattering his bones with audible, delayed cracks. It was moving faster now, like a time-lapse film of a predatory plant. It covered his torso. He was still alive, still screaming as it reached his face, his mouth, his eyes. His form became a vague, human-shaped outline inside a rapidly solidifying blue geode. Eva, Elias was breathless. "They're burying them alive." "Get me a fleet mobilization," Eva shouted, hitting the alert panel. "All hands to battle stations. Get me High Command. Now, Kenji, patch me through to the Icarus hangar. I want Warden Thorne and his squadron airborne 10 minutes ago." On the screen, the camera operator was tackled, not by an alien, but by the ground itself, a tendril of crystal sweeping his legs out. The camera fell, pointing sideways. The last image they saw, before the signal dissolved into a waterfall of static, was a bronze statue of a human family, a mother, a father, a child, in the center of the plaza. The shimmering, faceted blue crystal was crawling up it. The final, fragmented audio, received moments later, was not of explosions, but of 1,000 tuned wind chimes mixed with the sound of a glacier calving, and the wet, muffled, agonizing screams of 80,000 people being assimilated. Then silence. The klaxon stopped, its echo hanging in the air. The E-flat hum of the station returned, suddenly feeling fragile, like a thin shell of metal around a universe of horrors. Observer Zil flickered, its light a cold, analytical blue. It had not moved. "The Vought-Eskar have defied the mandate. The Krell tested your patience. The Vought-Eskar test your theology. The galaxy is now watching Warden Thorne, not the Vought-Eskar. They are watching you." The silence had been broken, and Elias knew, with sickening, absolute certainty, that the only thing in the universe more terrifying than humanity's silence would be its answer. The shock on the bridge of Aegis Point was a physical thing, a drop in pressure, a vacuum that sucked the air from 80 lungs. For a full 10 seconds, the only sound was the quiet, mournful ping of Kenji's console as the signal from New Ararat officially flatlined. "Seal the station," Eva Rostova's voice cut through the paralysis. It was not a shout, it was a blade. "Code Red, recall all patrols, spin up the primary fusion reactor and bring the defense grid to full power. I want every kinetic barrier at 100%, every missile tube hot." The bridge crew, drilled to perfection but never tested, moved with a frantic, jerky precision. Alarms began to chime in controlled, discrete bursts across the station. "Elias," Eva turned to him, her face a mask of iron control, but her knuckles on the command chair were white. "You have your orders, launch the Icarus. Take Kenji and Shadow Squadron. Your mission is reconnaissance only. I want to know what that thing is, how it works, and what the Vought-Eskar fleet disposition is. You do not engage. You do not cross the treaty line. You are my eyes, nothing more. Is that understood?" "And the survivors?" Elias asked, his throat dry. Eva's gaze didn't waver. "You will confirm there are none, that is all." Elias nodded, the words survivors already feeling like a fantasy. He grabbed Kenji by the arm. "You're with me, Lieutenant, to the hangar now." "Captain," Kenji looked at Eva, his face pale. "Warden Thorne is your flight lead. Go," she commanded. As they ran from the bridge, the station's heavy blast doors were already sliding shut, the thud of their locking mechanisms echoing down the gray corridors. They sprinted, their boots ringing on the metal deck, past crew members in full armor running to their battle stations. The E-flat hum was gone, replaced by the rising, powerful whine of the station's reactors spinning up to combat readiness. In the hangar, the Icarus waited. She was a beautiful, deadly thing, a null-field interceptor, her chassis made of black, radar-absorbent composites that seemed to drink the light. She wasn't built for brawling. She was a stiletto, designed for stealth, speed, and sensor warfare. Elias and Kenji, along with the other 4 pilots of Shadow Squadron, suited up in silence, the ritualistic hiss-click of their vacuum seals the only sound. "This is real, isn't it?" Kenji whispered as he strapped into the co-pilot seat of the Icarus. His hands were shaking slightly as he ran the pre-flight diagnostics. "It's real," Elias said, his voice muffled by the helmet comm. He sealed his visor, the world turning a crisp, green-tinted HUD. "Focus on the board, Kenji. Vitals, sensors, nav, I'll do the flying. We get in, we get the data, we get out. Clear." "Clear, sir," Kenji replied, his voice firming. The kid was scared, but he was a professional. "Aegis Command, this is Shadow Leader. We are green for launch," Elias broadcasted. The hangar bay doors split open, revealing not the expected black of space, but the swirling, violent, mesmerizing blue of the Kylo's nebula. It was closer than it should have been. "Captain," Elias said over the squadron channel, "the nebula, it's advanced. The borders shifted." "The Vod-S-Car lattice constructs are projecting it, Thorn," Eva's voice came back strained. "It's not just a nebula, it's a territorial marker. It's their space now. High Command has just issued a full fleet mobilization, codename Mandate. But they're 3 days out. We're on our own. Get me that data." "Acknowledged," Elias said. "Shadow Squadron launch." The Icarus and her 4 sister ships shot from the bay, their null-field engines leaving no thermal or gravimetric wake. They slipped into the edges of the nebula, a place that felt less like space and more like diving into a cloud of particulate crystal. The sensors immediately went insane. The particulate matter, microscopic Vod-S-Car crystals, diffusing their scans and refracting their lasers. "I'm blind in here, Elias," Shadow 2, a pilot named Gia, reported. "Sensors are soup." "Switch to gravimetric resonance," Elias ordered. "Look for the absence of chaos. The Vod-S-Car build. They create order. Look for patterns. Kenji, filter out the background noise. Give me anything that looks unnatural." Working," Kenji muttered. "Sir, I'm picking up a structure dead ahead. It's massive and it's singing." "Singing? A low-frequency resonant vibration. It's beautiful." "Filter it out," Elias snapped. "That's how they communicate. It's probably jamming." They broke through the first layer of the nebula, and the view screen was filled with a sight that stopped Elias' heart. New Ararat was gone. In its place was a geode, a perfect, massive sphere of shimmering, blue crystal, easily the size of a small moon. It pulsed with a faint, internal light, and the song Kenji had detected was thrumming from it, a deep bass vibration that Elias could feel in his teeth even through the Icarus's hull. "My God," Gia whispered over the comm. They encased the entire planet." "Where is the Vod-S-Car fleet?" Elias scanned the area. "Look at the geode, sir," Kenji pointed. "The spires on the surface, those aren't decorations." Elias magnified the view. Kenji was right. Clustered around the crystalline sphere attached to it like parasites were dozens of Vod-S-Car, shard, fighters, and several larger geode seeds. They weren't just guarding it, they were nursing it. They were pumping energy into it, and the geode was visibly, terrifyingly growing. They didn't just conquer it, Elias realized, his stomach churning. They're harvesting it. They're using the planet's mass, the rock, the water, the people as raw material. "Shadow Leader," Eva's voice was tense. "We just received a broadcast from the Vod-S-Car. It's for us." "Patch it through." The Vod-S-Car didn't use audio. The main screen split. On one side was the geode of New Ararat. On the other was a complex, shifting, hypnotic pattern of light. It was beautiful, like a kaleidoscope, but Zill's translation appeared as text at the bottom of the screen. "We are the VOTSKAR. We are the bulwark against the void. Humanity has broken the covenant of creation. You accelerate entropy. Your unmaking was the final heresy. We are the response. We do not destroy, we save. The matter of New Ararat has been reclaimed. Its chaos is given order. Its souls are given structure. They are eternal. This is not an attack. It is a judgment. We will reclaim all that you would unmake." The transmission ended. "A judgment," Elias spat. "They're calling it a salvation." "Elias," Kenji yelled. Movement, dozens of contacts breaking from the geode. They've been waiting for us. The Vought Eskar, Shard, fighters detached from the sphere and swarmed. They were not sleek. They were asymmetrical, all sharp angles and crystalline facets, and they moved in ways that shouldn't be possible, making instantaneous 90-degree turns. "Shadow Squadron, break and evade," Elias shouted, yanking the Icarus into a hard dive. "Weapons free, but aim for non-critical systems. We still need intel." The dogfight was pure, unadulterated chaos. Human ships were built for Newtonian physics, for thrust and counterthrust. Vought Eskar ships fractured space. They didn't fly, they created micro-rifts, disappearing and reappearing yards away. Plasma bolts from the human ships sizzled against their crystalline hulls, which seemed to heal, the crystal reforming as fast as it was damaged. "Their shields are regenerating, sir," Kenji yelled, his console flashing red as a Vought Eskar blast. A shard of pure, focused kinetic energy grazed their port wing. "They're not shields," Elias yelled back, wrestling with the controls. "They're growing, the ships are alive." "Shadow 4 is hit, I'm hit," a pilot screamed. My controls are crystallizing." Elias looked to his left. Shadow 4's ship, the Kestrel, was tumbling. A Vought Eskar shard was embedded in its engine block, but it wasn't exploding. A blue conversion crystal was growing from the impact point, spreading across the Kestrel's hull like a virus. "Eject, pilot, eject," Elias commanded. "I can't, the canopy. It's frozen, solid. Oh God, it's inside." The pilot's voice was cut off not by static, but by a wet, definitive crunch. "Elias, another wing, starboard," Kenji screamed. A Vought Eskar fighter appeared directly in front of them, having rifted into their path. Elias had no time to evade. He hammered the main cannons, blasting the crystalline ship at point-blank range. It shattered into 1,000 smaller shards, a cloud of glittering, deadly debris. "Brace!" The Icarus flew through the cloud. The sound was deafening, like a billion marbles hitting the hull. Alarms shrieked. "Hull integrity failing, port engine is fluctuating," Kenji reported, fighting his board. "We're leaking coolant." "Shadow 2, 3, 5, form up on me, we are retreating. Full power to engines, back to Aegis," Elias ordered. "We can't shake them," Gia, Shadow 2, cried. "They're too fast, they're hurting us." She was right. The Vought Eskar weren't trying to destroy them. They were disabling them, pushing them, caging them. "They're trying to capture us, Elias," Kenji whispered, his realization dawning. "They want to save us." That thought, more than any weapon, filled Elias with pure, cold terror. Death was one thing, becoming a thing, part of that blue crystal tomb. "Not today," Elias growled. He rerouted power from the failing port engine and life support, dumping it all into his null-field projector. "Kenji, hold on." "Sir, that's not a..." "Do it," Elias slammed his fist onto the console. "Invert the field, full focused burst dead ahead." The Icarus shuddered violently. Instead of making them invisible, the inverted null field acted like a gravimetric hammer, projecting a focused wave of wrong physics. The Vought Eskar, ships directly in their path, not expecting a non-lethal, physics-warping attack, were thrown tumbling. Their rifts failed, their songs went silent. It bought them 3 seconds. It was enough. "Go, go, go," Elias yelled. The Icarus and the 3 remaining shadow ships blasted past the confused Vought Eskar, their engines screaming as they pushed into hyperspace, leaving the geode of New Ararat behind. They limped back to Aegis Point, the Icarus trailing frozen coolant, its hull scarred and glittering with embedded crystal fragments. They landed hard in the hangar, the landing gear collapsing. Elias and Kenji stumbled out of the cockpit, pulling off their helmets. The hangar was silent. Eva was there, waiting for them, along with Zil. "Report," Eva said, her voice devoid of emotion. Elias was shaking, not from fear, but from rage. "They're gone, Captain, all of them. The planet is. It's a monument. They're harvesting it. The Vought Eskar ships. They regenerate, they rift. Our weapons are ineffective. They're designed to disable, not kill. They're trying to capture." He looked at his hands, which were bleeding. He'd gripped the controls so hard he'd cut them on the console's edge. "Shadow 4 and his entire crew," Elias said, his voice cracking. They were converted. I watched it happen." Eva Rostova closed her eyes. For a moment, she was not the captain of Aegis Point. She was the little girl in the maintenance duct on Tau Ceti. When she opened them, the iron was back. "Lieutenant Kenji," she said. Ma'am, Kenji snapped to attention, though he was trembling. Get to the medbay, then get to the debriefing room. Give the intel officers every sensor log you have. Kenji nodded and scrambled away, leaving Elias, Eva, and the silent Signian. This isn't a war, Elias, Eva said, her voice low. This is a conversion, a crusade. They believe they are righteous. They believe we are the plague and they are the cure. So what do we do, Eva? Elias pleaded. High Command is days away. The Vatskar know we're here. They let us go. They wanted us to see that. They wanted us to bring the message back. What do we do? Eva looked past him at the main viewport, which now showed the Kylo's nebula pulsing faintly. We hold the line. We prepare the station. We honor the mandate. The mandate? Elias laughed, a harsh, dry sound. The mandate was attack and face obliteration. We have been attacked. Where is the obliteration, Eva? Where is the KSC? The KSC is not a weapon, Elias, Eva said, her voice dropping to a whisper. It's a monster, and we only unleash it when we have become what we are fighting. We're not there yet. They're turning our people into crystal. And we turned the Krell into nothing, Eva shouted, her control finally breaking. The hangar echoed with her voice. We unmade a star, we erased billions, we have that power and the Vatskar know it. They are daring us to use it. They want us to prove their point, that we are the entropy heresy, that we are the void. Elias stared at her, stunned by her ferocity. Zil shimmered. The captain is correct in her logic. The Vatskar are zealots, they seek martyrdom, they wish you to use the KSC. It would prove their theology to the rest of the galaxy. It would be their final ordered act. Eva took a deep, shuddering breath, regaining her composure. The KSC key is sealed in the station's core under dual authentication. It stays there. We will fight them conventionally. We will hold this station until the fleet arrives. That is my final order on the matter. And if they overwhelm us? Elias asked, the image of Shadow 4's crystallized cockpit burning in his mind. If they board this station, if they try to save us, Eva. Eva Rostova looked at the bulkhead, her gaze distant. Then we show them the other kind of human resilience. We show them how chaotic matter burns. She turned and walked out of the hangar, leaving Elias alone with the silent, glittering crystal dust that coated the floor. The 24 hours after the Icarus's return were the longest in Aegis Point's history. The station transformed. The E-flat hum of peace was replaced by the thrumming, metallic heartbeat of a fortress preparing for a siege. Corridors, once sterile and empty, bristled with marine fireteams welding extra armor plating over bulkheads and setting up kinetic barriers at every major junction. The air grew thick with the smell of ozone, hot metal, and nervous sweat. Elias Thorne found himself in the armory, checking the charge on a plasma rifle. His hands were steady now. The rage had cooled, hardened into a dense, cold resolve. He was a pilot without a ship. The Icarus was undergoing frantic repairs, its hull still seeded with Vatskar crystal that technicians were chipping away, piece by agonizing piece. Kenji found him there, his face pale but set. Sir, the sensor logs are fully downloaded. Intel, they're terrified. They should be, Elias said, not looking up from the rifle. What's the full analysis? Worse than we thought, Kenji said, pulling up a datapad. The conversion process isn't just a coding, it's a biomechanical virus propagated by the crystal. It rewrites matter at the quantum level. It's not just encasing them, sir, it's consuming them. The human biomass, the planet's core, the station's armor. It's all just raw material for them. Elias snapped the rifle's power cell into place. So, extermination. Assimilation, Kenji corrected, his voice quiet. They are preserving the quantum signature of those they convert. The Vatskar believe the consciousness is stored in the crystal lattice. They think they're granting immortality. A living tomb, Elias spat. A fate worse than the unmaking. At least the Krell got oblivion. He slung the rifle over his shoulder and made for the bridge. He found Eva Rostova in her command chair, a dozen holographic displays swirling around her. She was coordinating defense plans, diverting power, and fighting with high command over a scrambled, time-lagged subspace channel. 3 days is unacceptable, she was shouting at a static-laced image of an admiral. The architect's hand is already at our doorstep. We need the fleet now. You will hold, Captain, the admiral's tinny voice replied. The Mandate fleet is the largest assembly since the Krell War. It cannot be rushed. Your primary objective is to deny the Vatskar this station and its key. Do whatever it takes. High command out. The admiral's image vanished, leaving Eva staring into the static. The architect's hand, Elias asked. Intel's designation for the VOD-S-CAR flagship, Eva said, rubbing her temples. It appeared on our long-range sensors an hour ago. It's not a ship, Elias, it's the size of a city, and it's heading a full conversion phalanx, not a scouting party, the main event. As if on cue, the station shuddered. Not a violent explosion, but a deep, resonant thrum, like a tuning fork had been struck against the hull. What was that? Eva demanded. Contacts everywhere, Kenji, back at his post, yelled. They're not ships, they're asteroids, no. Geode seeds, they've launched them from the hand, they're impacting the hull. The station groaned. It was a sound of tortured metal. Report, Eva barked. Sector 4 hull breach, Sector 7 hull breach, a damage control officer yelled. Wait, pressure is holding, ma'am, the VOD-S-CAR seeds. They're sealing the breaches as they make them, with crystal. They're not trying to destroy the station, Elias said, his blood running cold. They're converting it, just like New Ararat, just like the Kestrel. Observer Zill flickered into existence next to the star chart. Its light was a bright, intense violet. They are efficient. They do not waste matter. Your station will become their new temple. Marines, Sector 4. Eva ignored the Signian. Full containment teams, I want those breaches sealed with plasma fire. Melt that crystal back into the void. Too late, ma'am. The comms channel opened to a frantic Marine sergeant. It's growing, we're firing on it, but it's healing faster than we can. Arg. The channel dissolved into screams, the sound of plasma fire, and then, most horrifyingly, the clear, chiming crunch of crystal growing over a hot microphone. Then, silence. Seal Sector 4, Eva commanded, her voice barely a whisper. Quarantine it. Vent the atmosphere if you have to. Ma'am, we can't, the damage control officer said, his face ashen. The growth has already sealed the bulkheads from the inside. It's spreading through the ducts. It's rewriting the station's internal systems. The sterile 5,000K lights on the bridge flickered. They dimmed, and for a terrifying second, they glowed a cold, shimmering blue. They're in the power grid, Kenji whispered. Bridge to engineering, Eva yelled. Cut all non-essential power, reroute primary command functions to the bridge's independent reactor. Lock us down. Engineering, not responding, Captain, Kenji said, his fingers flying. The internal comms, they're singing, ma'am, the VOD-S-CAR frequency. It's coming from inside the station. The bridge doors, designed to withstand a nuclear blast, buckled. A spiderweb of blue crystal was growing from the seams, forcing the metal apart with slow, agonizing groans. They're here, Elias said, raising his rifle. He and the 10 bridge guards formed a perimeter around the command chair. This is Captain Eva Rostova, Eva broadcast station-wide. All human personnel, the station is compromised. The VOD-S-CAR are converting Aegis Point. The mandate protocols are now in effect. Scuttle the station, fight to the last. Do not let them take you, do not be saved. Rostova out. She turned to her console and began typing a long authorization code. What are you doing? Elias asked, his eyes on the groaning door. Activating the self-destruct, she said, her voice grim. A conventional fusion overload, clean, hot, no order, just chaos. The bridge doors burst open. It was not a wave of VOD-S-CAR warriors. It was a thing, a conversion node. A tidal wave of blue crystal 10 feet high that rolled into the bridge, shimmering with internal light. It was beautiful, and it was the most obscene thing Elias had ever seen. Marine guards fired their rifles into it. The plasma bolts were simply absorbed, the energy making the crystal glow brighter. The node paused, sensing them, then it lunged. It struck 2 guards, who screamed as the crystal flowed over them like liquid, hardening instantly. They were frozen, statues of blue crystal, their faces locked in silent horror, rifles still raised. Fall back to the escape pods, Elias yelled, pulling Eva from her chair. No, Eva shoved him back. The self-destruct, it needs my final authentication, the crystal. It's locking me out of the system. She was right. Her console was covered in a thin, frosty layer of blue. As she tried to press the final authorization, the crystal simply grew over her hand, encasing it to the console. Eva, Elias rushed to her, trying to break the crystal with his rifle butt. It was useless. It was harder than diamond. It's too late, Elias, she said, her voice calm. The crystal was already crawling up her arm, fast, snaking around her torso. They've locked me out, they're saving me. She looked at Elias, her gray eyes clear and sharp. I won't let them, Elias said, raising his rifle, his target her, not the crystal. No, she commanded. That's not the way, not like this. The crystal was at her neck. She was breathing in short, sharp gasps. The Icarus, Elias, the hangar bay, it's still sealed. The Vought car aren't in there yet. Get to your ship. I'm not leaving you, he yelled, tears of rage and grief streaming down his face. You are, Warden, she ordered, her voice straining as the crystal compressed her chest. The KSC, the key. It's not just the weapon, it's a protocol. It requires 2 keys to be activated. Mine, she grunted, touching the obsidian amulet around her neck, now half covered in crystal. And the second key on Earth, but the Aegis core. It holds the authentication codes, the Vought car. They can't have those codes, they can't know how we do it. The crystal was at her chin. Get to the Icarus, get to Earth, tell them what the Vought car are, tell them what this salvation looks like, warn them. Eva, they can't have the codes, Elias, and they can't have me. The crystal was covering her mouth, her eyes were locked on his. She did the only thing she had left. With her one free, uncrystallized hand, she reached, not for her console, but for her sidearm. The Vought car, in their arrogance, had not seen the simple, chaotic projectile weapon as a threat. Go, she gurgled, her voice muffled. Elias stumbled back, horrified, understanding. No, Eva, don't. The conversion node, sensing her chaotic actions, surged toward her. Resilience, Elias, her voice, now only in his calm, choked out. That's all we have, don't let them take that. She put the pistol to her own temple. Elias turned, unable to watch, just as the node completely engulfed her and the command chair in a tomb of blue crystal. Kenji, Zil, to the hangar! Elias roared, firing his rifle into the node not to damage it but to blind it, the plasma flare-up giving them cover. He, Kenji, and the flickering form of Zil sprinted from the bridge, sealing the door behind them. A moment later, they heard a single, muffled pop from the other side. Not an explosion. A simple, chaotic, conventional bullet. They ran through the corridors. The station was a nightmare. The walls were sweating blue crystal. The lights were all a dim, pulsing blue. The song of the Vought car was everywhere, a vibrating thrum that shook their skeletons. They reached the hangar. It was pristine. The Icarus sat there, its repairs half finished, but its cockpit was dark. It's sealed, Kenji yelled, trying the bulkhead controls. The Vought car have locked us out. They locked it from the outside, Elias said. He found a maintenance panel, ripped it open, and began hot-wiring the door's manual release. They don't understand chaotic overrides. They think if they control the system, they control us. The door hissed open. They piled into the Icarus cockpit. Powering up, Elias said, his hands flying. Kenji, get us an exit. Blow the hangar doors now. Sir, Kenji's voice was broken. He was weeping. The captain. The captain did her duty, Lieutenant, Elias said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Now do yours, blow the doors. Kenji nodded, wiping his face, and armed the explosive bolts. Elias, Zil's chime voice was soft in his head. Look. Zil pointed to the hangar's small viewport. Outside, Aegis Point was no longer a gray station. It was a massive, glittering blue crystal sprouting from the void. The Vought car flagship, the architect's hand, a fractal mountain of a ship, loomed over it. And then Aegis Point's fusion core went critical. Eva's self-destruct, locked out by the crystal, had finally, chaotically broken through. It wasn't the clean, controlled detonation she'd wanted. It was a dirty, catastrophic, furious explosion. The Icarus was launched by the shockwave, tumbling through space, its systems screaming. Elias fought the controls, his G-suit straining. When he stabilized the ship, he looked back. Aegis Point was gone. A cloud of expanding, superheated plasma and vaporized crystal was all that remained. Eva Rostova had denied the Vought car their prize. She had denied them their salvation. She had held the line. The architect's hand, Kenji whispered, his voice full of awe and terror. It's unharmed. Elias looked. The Vought car flagship had weathered the blast, its crystalline, fractal hull having diffused the energy. It turned, slow and majestic, its internal blue lights pulsing. It ignored the tiny, tumbling Icarus. It had failed to save the station, but it had won the engagement. It turned and began to move deeper into human space, towards Earth. She bought us time, Kenji, Elias said, his voice rough. He engaged the hyperspace drive, programming the coordinates for Saul. Let's not waste it. The Icarus was a tomb hurtling through the unnatural silence of hyperspace. The journey from the Kylo's border to the Sol relay was supposed to take 3 days. To Elias, it felt like 3 eternities. The ship was battered, its systems running on emergency power. The smell of ozone from the fried circuits was inescapable. Elias didn't sleep. He sat in the pilot's chair, staring into the swirling non-space of the jump, Eva's last, choked word, resilience, playing on a loop in his mind. Kenji had cried himself to exhaustion, and now slept, strapped into the co-pilot's chair, his breathing shallow, his dreams clearly not peaceful. Elias was alone, or so he thought. Her sacrifice was inefficient. Elias flinched. Observer Zil had flickered into existence in the small space behind the chairs. Its cobalt light cast strange, dancing shadows on the bulkheads. Inefficient, Elias growled, not turning. She saved us, she saved the codes. A full station self-destruct to deny a single data point, Zil's chime voice resonated. The VOD-S car would have simply built a new station. Captain Rostova's action was driven by spite. An emotional, chaotic variable. It is, quintessentially human, and from a tactical standpoint, a waste. She died to prove a point, Elias said, his voice low and dangerous. She died to show them and you that we will not be saved. That we'd rather burn. That's not waste, Zil, that's a message. A message the VOD-S car did not receive, Zil countered, its form brightening. The architect's hand survived. It is proceeding to your core worlds. They perceived her act not as defiance, but as the final, chaotic spasm of a dying organism. An organism they intend to fix. Then they'll just have to get the message again, Elias said. When we get to Earth, we'll arm the KSC. We'll give them the unmaking they're so obsessed with. Will you, Warden Thorn? Zil glided, its energy form passing through the co-pilot's chair to hover directly beside Elias. The VOD-S car are not your only problem. Elias finally turned. What does that mean? The Conclave records. We see patterns your species in its emotional haste ignores. The VOD-S car have been isolationists for 10,000 years. They have never shown interest in heresy before. Why now? Why New Ararat? You tell me, Zil, you're the one with all the answers. We do not have answers. We have data, and this data is troubling. Zil's form shifted, and in the air between them it projected a holographic image. It was a recording, but not from a human or VOD-S car source. It was from a Conclave Watcher drone hidden in a deep space asteroid belt. The image showed a VOD-S car, geode ship, shimmering in blue. It was meeting with another vessel. This one was dark, asymmetrical, a patchwork of scavenged armor plating and oversized engines. It was ugly, functional, and reeked of desperation. I don't recognize the ship, Elias said. You would not, Zil replied. It is a Krell Void Clan vessel, a scrapper ship. Elias felt his blood turn to ice. The Krell are gone. We unmade them. You unmade their system, Zil corrected. You shattered their hegemony. You did not and could not unmake their species. Billions died, but tens of thousands, those on deep space patrols, in colony ships, in listening posts. They survived. They became the Void Clans. Nomads, pirates, scavengers, living in the dark, cold spaces between stars, hatting. The recording showed a transfer. A Krell, gaunt, its chitin scarred, its movements jerky and furious, was handing a data slate to a VOD-S car projection. That's impossible, Elias whispered. The VOD-S car despise chaotic life. The Krell are the definition of it. The Krell offered them a gift, Zil explained. The coordinates to New Ararat, a soft, chaotic world, ripe for reclamation. They presented it as an offering of peace, a gesture of submission to the VOD-S car's order. They provoked this war, Elias realized, the horror dawning. The VOD-S car are just the weapon. The Krell pulled the trigger. Indeed, Zil chimed. The Krell hate you, Warden. They hate you with a purity your species has never encountered. They want you to use the KSC again. They need you to. Why, to get revenge? It wouldn't bring their star back. No, Zil said, its light turning a cold, analytical white. To prove their point. The Krell Void Clans have spent 50 years petitioning the Signian Conclave and the other galactic powers. They have painted you as monsters, as the entropy heresy incarnate. The unmaking was your first sin. If you use it again on the VOD-S car, a species that, however abhorrently, is acting on deep religious principle, you will prove the Krell right. Elias saw the trap, vast and perfect. If we use the key, the entire galaxy unites against us. The Krell win. They get to watch the rest of the universe exterminate us. And if you do not use the key, Zil finished, the Vought Eskar will save your entire species one planet at a time. The Krell will have their revenge either way. Your mandate, your weapon, has been turned against you. It is the most elegant, patient, and hateful trap the Conclave has ever recorded. The Icarus dropped out of hyperspace with a lurch that slammed Elias against his restraints and jolted Kenji awake. Where are we? Kenji mumbled, rubbing his face. Saul, Elias said, his voice hollow. The view screen cleared and they were home. It was not the peaceful blue jewel Elias remembered. Saul was a fortress. Mars, once a red beacon of terraforming, was now a gray shipyard, its orbital space choked with the skeletal frames of new warships. Titan, Saturn's moon, was a massive key facility, its methane oceans glowing with the power of the antimatter reactors that fueled the KSC project. And Earth was surrounded by a tri-layer defense perimeter, a web of particle cannons and kinetic platforms that put Aegis Point to shame. Aegis Command, this is Shadow Leader? Scratch that. This is Warden Elias Thorne, Registry. We have you, Icarus, a crisp, authoritative voice cut him off. Vector 33 Alpha, you are to land at High Command, Geneva, immediately, and Warden, welcome home. The Icarus, scarred and trailing vapor, was guided through the defense web. They descended, breaking through the atmosphere over a nighttime Europe. Geneva was no longer a diplomatic city. It was the nerve center of the human military. They landed in a fortified bunker deep beneath the Alps. The moment the canopy hissed open, Elias and Kenji were surrounded by soldiers in black environmental hazard armor. They're clear, one shouted, his helmet scanner passing over them. No crystalline contagion. Elias stumbled out onto the deck, his legs weak. A man in a stark black general's uniform was waiting for him. He was tall, his face carved from granite, his eyes the same gray as Eva Rostova's. Elias, the man said, it wasn't a greeting, it was an acknowledgement. Father, Elias replied, straightening up, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten, replaced by a different, older tension. General Marcus Thorne, architect of the Krell unmaking, and the man responsible for the mandate itself. You look like hell, son, Marcus said, his eyes scanning Elias for weakness. The rest of your squadron. Gone, Elias said. Captain Rostova. Gone, she scuttled the station, denied them the codes, and herself. Marcus Thorne nodded, a single, sharp jerk of his chin. She was a good soldier, her sacrifice has been noted. He turned. Walk with me, Lieutenant, he nodded to Kenji. You will be debriefed by intelligence, your work is done. Kenji looked at Elias, who gave him a slight nod. You did well, Kenji. The young pilot was led away, and Elias was left alone with his father. They walked through vast underground corridors, the air cold and pressurized. The architect's hand has breached the Jupiter line, Marcus said, not slowing. It converted Io, just ate it, turned it into a new geode. It's moving on Europa. Then we have to act, Elias said. We have to use the key. Of course we do, Marcus replied, as if stating the obvious. That's why you're here. You're the ranking survivor of Aegis. You are the formal witness to the Vought Eskar's transgression. The War Council is convened. You will give your testimony, and we will get the authorization. Father, it's not that simple. They entered the War Council chamber. It was a vast, subterranean amphitheater. Below, seated around a circular, black table, were the 10 leaders of the Terran Alliance, generals, admirals, and at the head, Chancellor Orlova, the civilian leader. General Thorne, Orlova said, her voice amplified. You are late, and you've brought a witness who should be in quarantine. This is Warden Elias Thorne, my son, Marcus said, his voice booming. He is the quarantine. He saw the Vought Eskar conversion firsthand. He saw the end of Aegis Point. He is here to confirm the act of war. Elias was pushed forward to a podium. He looked at the faces. The hawks, like his father, were staring at him with hungry anticipation. The doves, like Chancellor Orlova, looked at him with dread. Warden Thorne, Orlova said, her voice gentle, tell us what happened, tell us why we must do this. Elias looked at his father, who was watching him with a burning intensity. He thought of Eva's sacrifice, he thought of Kenji's terror, and he thought of the Krell hiding in the dark, waiting. Chancellor, Elias said, his voice surprisingly clear and strong. We have been attacked. Aegis Point is destroyed. 80,000 civilians on New Ararat are gone. The Vought Eskar are an existential threat. Then you agree, a hawk-like admiral boomed. We use the key. We unmake the architect's hand. No, Elias said. The room went utterly silent. General Thorne's face turned to thunder. What did you say, Warden? His father's voice was a low growl. I said no, Elias repeated, turning to face him. The KSC is exactly what the Vought Eskar want us to use, and it's exactly what the Krell want us to use. He recounted Zill's revelation. The Krell survivors, the Vought Eskar manipulation, the galactic trap. The room listened, stunned. A Signian theory, the Admiral stammered. We're supposed to sacrifice Europa based on the feeling of a gas cloud. It's the truth, Elias slammed his fist on the podium. Zill is here, he can testify. Zill is an observer, Marcus Thorne roared. His presence is a poison, he is filling your head with doubt. The Krell are dead, Elias, we are facing a new enemy. They are not dead, Elias shouted back, the decades of tension between them finally snapping. You were so proud of your clean weapon, father, so proud of the mandate. You didn't finish the job, and now the ghosts of the Krell are using our own gun to kill us. We are in a cage of your making. That is enough, Marcus bellowed. No, it's not, Elias turned to Orlova. Chancellor, think. The Krell want us to be monsters. The Vought Eskar want us to be monsters. They are begging us to prove them right. Eva Rostova didn't die for that. She died to prove we were something else. She died. She died for resilience. Resilience is not a strategy, son, Marcus sneered. It's a eulogy. You're wrong, Elias said, his mind racing, an idea forming, insane and desperate. It's our only strategy. The Vought Eskar are zealots united by a single song, a single order. They're immune to our weapons because they believe they are righteous. The Krell are using that. They're using our reputation against us. Your point, Warden? Orlova asked, leaning forward. My point, Elias said, is that we don't need the KSC. We don't need to unmake them. We need to break them. We need to show the galaxy the truth, not our truth, the whole truth. He looked up, finding the hidden sensor in the ceiling he knew was there. Zill, you're here, I know you are. You're recording. Zill's cobalt form flickered into existence on the council floor, causing half the admirals to leap to their feet, hands on their sidearms. This is a restricted chamber, Marcus roared. Zill, Elias commanded, walking down to the floor. You are a witness of the Conclave. It's time to testify. You're connected to the Conclave Loom, the galactic network. I want you to broadcast everything. The Krell manipulating the Vought Eskar, the Vought Eskar conversion of New Ararat, the audio from the plaza. Show them Kenji's sensor logs. Show them. Show them Eva's final act. Show the galaxy why we built the key, and then show them our refusal to use it. Zill flickered, its light pulsing with an intensity Elias had never seen. This is unprecedented. The Conclave does not interfere, we record. Interfering is using a weapon, Elias shot back. Broadcasting the truth is recording on a galactic scale. Do it. Show them what order and chaos really mean. Let the galaxy witness. Chancellor Orlova stood. General Thorne, your key. Marcus looked at her, confused. Chancellor. Give me your authorization key. And you, Admiral, she pointed. Yours too. All military keys are hereby rescinded. The key is now under civilian control. Mine. She looked at Elias, then at Zill. We will fight the Vought Eskar conventionally. The home fleet will engage, but we will do it while the galaxy watches. She turned to the Signian. Observer Zill, you have your orders. Testify. This is madness, General Thorne shouted. The fleet will be slaughtered. The conversion beam. The fleet will hold the line, General, Orlova said, her voice ringing with steel. Just as Captain Rostova did, we will show the galaxy our resilience, or we will die proving we are not the monsters they think we are. Zill's form pulsed once, a blinding flash of violet light. As you wish, Chancellor, the testimony has begun. Across the galaxy, on tens of thousands of worlds, in the minds of hundreds of species, a new song began. It was not the order of the Vought Eskar. It was the chaos of humanity. It was the sound of 80,000 people screaming as they were turned to crystal. It was the sound of Eva Rostova's last, defiant breath. And it was the sound of the galaxy's most terrible weapon, remaining silent. The Sol system was a tinderbox. The Vought Eskar flagship, the Architect's Hand, had finished its salvation of Io and was now moving on Europa, its conversion beam, a lance of pure, focused, matter-rewriting energy, already lancing out to test the moon's icy crust. The human home fleet, 300 of the Alliance's most advanced warships, had formed a defensive shell around Earth, a brittle line of steel and plasma. In the command bunker in Geneva, the mood was funereal. General Marcus Thorne paced like a caged lion, his face a mask of apoplectic fury. Chancellor Orlova sat at the Central Command throne, her hands clasped, watching the main strategic display. The two keys required to arm the KSC sat on the console before her, inert, their obsidian surfaces drinking the light. Elias was not in the bunker. He was where he belonged, in the cockpit of the Icarus. The ship was repaired, refueled, and rearmed, but its mission was not to fight. "Zil, are you with me?" Elias said into the empty cockpit. "I am everywhere, Warden Thorne," Zil's voice chimed in his head, no longer localized, but ambient. "The testimony is broadcasting. The conclave loom is open. The galaxy is listening." In a stunning, unprecedented move, Zil had tapped into the psionic subspace network of the Signian conclave. It was not a radio wave. It was a feeling, a truth. An impression beamed directly into the minds of every sentient species in the galaxy. A montage of reactions was playing out across billions of light years. A testimony that Zil was simultaneously broadcasting and receiving. On a dark, methane-ice asteroid, the Krell Void clan gathered around their stolen Vought-Eskar communicator. Their leader, a scarred veteran of the First War, shrieked in fury, its mandibles snapping as it felt its perfect trap being exposed to the galactic community. They were no longer unseen ghosts. They were murderers exposed. In the Signian conclave itself, 1,000 beings of light vibrated with agitation. They were arguing. For the first time in millennia, the recorders were debating the morality of what they recorded. And on the bridge of the architect's hand, Praetorix Kale, the Vought-Eskar leader, felt it. He was a being of pure, crystalline order. His consciousness spread throughout his magnificent ship. He felt the testimony as a dissonant, ugly noise. It was the sound of Eva's chaotic death. It was the sound of Kenji's chaotic fear. It was the sound of 80,000 chaotic souls screaming in the crystal of New Ararat. It was disgusting, it was heresy. They foul the great song with their chaos, Kale's voice, a vibration in the crystal of his ship, commanded. They defend their entropy, they revel in it, they will not be saved. They must be silenced. He ordered the phalanx to accelerate. He would not just save Earth. He would scour it, encase the entire planet in a Malthic crystal shell, and silence its chaotic, psychic scream forever. The architect's hand is accelerating, Kenji Tanaka, now promoted to the bunker's sensor chief, yelled. It's not stopping at Europa, it's on a direct intercept course for the fleet, for Earth. General Thorne, Orlova said, her voice tight. Your fleet, engage. All ships, Marcus's voice boomed over the fleet channel. Fire on my mark, Alpha formation, concentrate fire on the hand. Break it now. The battle began. It was pure, terrifying cinema. The sleek, deadly, gunmetal gray of the human home fleet, led by the flagship UNS Vanguard, unleashed a torrent of plasma, kinetics, and missiles. The Vought-Eskar phalanx met them. The Vought-Eskar shard fighters as before were regenerating, rifting through the human formations, disabling ships with conversion torpedoes. But the human fleet was not Aegis Point. It was a wall of pure, chaotic firepower. They're adapting, an admiral shouted in the bunker. Our ships are modulating shield frequencies. We're actually hurting them. It's not enough, Marcus said, his eyes glued to the architect's hand. The Vought-Eskar flagship was absorbing the fire from the Vanguard and a dozen other capital ships, its fractal hull diffusing the energy, the crystal singing as it healed itself. It's powering its main weapon, Kenji whispered, the conversion beam. A massive crystalline spire on the hand began to glow with a blinding, terrifying blue light. All ships evade, Marcus roared. It was too late. The beam, a mile-wide shaft of pure order, lashed out. It struck the UNS Vanguard. There was no explosion, no fire, no debris. The flagship, a vessel weighing 40 million tons, crewed by 10,000 souls, froze. In the bunker, they watched on the main screen. The metal of the Vanguard groaned, twisted, and in an instant was completely, totally encased. The ship's plasma fire died. Its engines went silent. It became a geode, a massive, human-shaped tomb of blue crystal tumbling lifelessly in space. 10,000 souls, saved. Silence reigned in the bunker. The fleet, stunned, hesitated. General Marcus Thorne looked at the crystalline Vanguard, his ship, his crew. He turned to Orlova, his face a mask of such grief and rage that Elias, watching on his private feed, flinched. Chancellor, Marcus said, his voice terrifyingly calm. You will give me those keys now. Orlova stared at the frozen vanguard, her resolve shattering. 10,000. Do it, father, no, Elias screamed over the comm. It's what they want, look. On his screen, the architect's hand was turning, its main weapon aligning, not on the fleet, but on Earth. They're firing at the planet, Orlova whispered in horror. This is the judgment, Elias said, his mind racing, connecting Zill's testimony with Eva's resilience. The Vought Eskar were united by their song, their order. They were immune because they were zealots. But the testimony, it was noise, it was chaos, it was empathy. Zill, Elias shouted, what's the exact resonant frequency of the testimony broadcast, the loom frequency? It is 1.44 terahertz modulated psionically, Zill's voice chimed, confused. Why? Kenji, Elias patched himself into the bunker. The null field projector, the one I used to escape the nebula, it's a gravimetric wave projector. Can you tune it from your console remotely? Kenji, catching his drift, was already typing. The field projector. You want to modulate it to the conclave's frequency? Sir, the energy required. It would fry your ship. It would fry you. Just do it, Kenji, Elias yelled. Get ready. He gunned the Icarus's engines. Chancellor, father, distract them. I need the beam. I need them to fire at me. What? Marcus gaped. Elias, no. Do it. Elias shot the Icarus out from behind the moon, flying directly at the architect's hand. He fired his small, useless cannons at the flagship. Come on, you crystalline bastard. Look at me, I'm chaos. Come and save me. On the bridge of the hand, Praetorix Kale saw the tiny, annoying ship. This heretic, the source of the noise that was fouling his song. Silence this, chaos, Kale vibrated. The main conversion beam, which had been aimed at Earth, shifted. It locked onto the Icarus. They're firing at him, he's insane, Marcus shouted. Kenji, now, Elias roared. Modulating field is unstable, sir. Hold it. Elias rerouted every last bit of power from his engines, his shields, his life support into the null field projector. The cockpit lights died. His HUD went black. He was flying blind, strapped to a bomb aimed at a god. The conversion beam struck the Icarus. But it didn't convert it. The beam, a conduit of order, hit the null field, which was now vibrating, shrieking at the exact frequency of the conclave's testimony. The testimony, Eva's death, the Krell's betrayal, the screams of New Ararat, and humanity's refusal to use the KSC, was chaos, and Elias had just weaponized it. The testimony frequency, amplified 1 trillion times by the Vought Eskar's own conversion beam, was fed back up the beam. It was a psychic feedback loop, an empathy bomb. On the bridge of the architect's hand, Praetorix Kale screamed. It was not a sound, it was a shattering of the order. He was not just Kale anymore. He was in the plaza at New Ararat. He was the man being encased in crystal. He was Shadow 4, his cockpit freezing. He was Eva Rostova, her finger on the trigger, her last thought of resilience. He felt the Krell's bottomless, ancient hatred. He felt humanity's agonizing, heart-stopping restraint. He felt the chaos, he felt the pain, he felt the empathy. The great song of the Vought Eskar shattered. The amplified testimony washed over the entire Vought Eskar fleet. Their ordered, hive-mind consciousness, which had been so strong, was flooded with chaotic doubt. Their ships stopped regenerating. Their rift drives failed. Their weapons went silent. The Vought Eskar, who believed they were saving the universe from entropy, were suddenly, violently, confronted with the value, the texture, the agony, the beauty of the chaos they sought to destroy. The architect's hand didn't explode. Its internal blue light died. It just stopped, a mountain of dead crystal. The entire Vought Eskar fleet, its song broken, its order gone, drifted aimlessly, dead in the water. In the Earth bunker, the admirals and generals stared, speechless. General Thorne lowered his hand from where it had been reaching for the keys. He looked at the main screen, at the silent, floating Vought Eskar armada. In the cockpit of the Icarus, the power was gone. The ship was fried, a blackened, tumbling piece of metal. Elias was slumped against his harness, his skin burned from the energy backlash, the inside of his helmet cracked. His last fatting transmission whispered over a dying comm, "We held the line, Eva, we held." Then, for the first time in 50 years, a new, earned silence fell over the Sol system. The silence that followed the battle was not the tense, fearful quiet of the Mandate. It was the stunned, breathless hush of a universe that had just witnessed the impossible. The Vought-Eskar fleet, leaderless and broken, did not fight. It did not flee. It simply drifted. The great song that had bound them was gone, shattered by the testimony, and the individual crystalline beings within the ships were awakened to an individuality they were not prepared for. They were captured, not destroyed. The architect's hand was taken in tow, a colossal, dark monument to a failed crusade. Praetoric's Kale, found in its central choir chamber, was changed. He was no longer a zealot. He was a being of pure crystal weeping from the overwhelming noise of empathy. He was placed in containment, constantly whispering, "The chaos, it has shaped the void, it sings." The Vought-Eskar Empire, reliant on his singular order, collapsed, not into war, but into profound, systemic confusion. They were no longer a threat. The Krell Void clans, their perfect trap exposed, had no time to flee. The testimony had revealed their hiding places, their secret routes. The Signian Conclave, in its first interference in millennia, formally sanctioned them. The rest of the galaxy, now seeing the Krell not as victims but as galactic instigators, shunned them. They were not unmade by humanity. They were simply ignored. Their hatred, left to fester alone in the dark, was rendered powerless. And humanity, the Orion Mandate, attack and face obliteration, was quietly, officially rescinded. It was no longer necessary. The galaxy had witnessed pure obliteration, but it was the refusal to use it, the restraint shown in the face of assimilation, that had truly shaken the stars. The galaxy replaced the Mandate on humanity's behalf. The Signian testimony became a galactic record, a new law. It was a testament to humanity's choice. Possessing the power to unmake a star, they had chosen not to use it, even when facing annihilation. Humanity was no longer the boogeyman. They were something stranger, something more complex. They were the sleepers, the species that held the void in one hand and empathy in the other. They were respected, and in a new way they were still feared, not for their weapon, but for their will. Elias Thorne awoke to the sterile beep of a medical monitor and the smell of real, unfiltered air. He was in a private room in the Geneva hospital, his skin slick with nutrient gel, his arms bandaged from the burns. General Marcus Thorne was sitting by the window in his dress uniform, staring out at the sunlit Alps. He looked older. "The Icarus," Elias rasped, his throat raw. "A charred piece of scrap," Marcus said, not turning. "The Alliance is nomming a new class of warship after it. The Thorne class, though I doubt they'll be null-field ships, they'll be something else." Elias pushed himself up on his elbows. "Father." Marcus turned. His eyes, usually so hard, were etched with a profound exhaustion. He walked to the bed. You were right, Elias. I saw the KSC as a hammer. I built a galaxy where every problem looked like a nail." "It's not a weapon, Father," Elias whispered. "It's a question. What are we? And we have to get the answer right every single time, or we're no better than the Krell or the Vought-Eskar." Marcus sat on the edge of the bed. "Chancellor Orlover is routing the entire KSC budget into Project Vanguard." Elias looked confused. "The ship." "The Vanguard," Marcus said, a hitch in his voice. "And the geode of New Ararat, they're studying the conversion process, not to weaponize it, but to see if the quantum signatures are still there, to see if they can sing back the 10,000 souls we lost, and the 80,000. Elias absorbed this. Resilience. "Resilience," Marcus agreed. He cleared his throat, and for the first time, Elias saw something other than a general. "Eva, Captain Rostova, she would be proud of you, son. I am proud of you." He placed a small, dark object on the bedside table. It was his own KSC key, the obsidian amulet. "The project is sealed. We're not unmaking anything ever again." As his father left, a new presence filled the room. Zil shimmered into view, its light now a soft, warm spectrum, a swirling mix of cobalt, violet, and gold. "The Conclave has finished its testimony," Zil's voice chimed. It felt different, softer. "Your war is over." "And you, Zil?" Elias asked, sinking back into the pillow. "What do you witness now? Are you done recording us?" Zil's form pulsed, a gesture Elias was beginning to recognize as thoughtful. "The Krell were predictable entropy. The Vought-Eskar were predictable order. Your species is not. You are the chaotic variable. You have introduced the most unstable and most fascinating element into the galactic equation." "And what's that?" "Grace," Zil chimed. "The Krell unmaking was physics. Your testimony was grace. The conclave can record physics. We are finding it difficult to quantify grace. I will remain. I wish to see what you build, and what you choose not to destroy. The energy being flickered and was gone. Months later, Elia's Heald stood on the rebuilt Aegis Point. It was no longer a gray military outpost. It was a joint diplomatic station, built of human steel and polished, inert Vought-Eskar crystal, a swirling monument of blue and gray. It was the new home of the Cygnian Conclave Embassy. He was in civilian clothes. He was no longer a warden. He was an ambassador. He stood at the main viewport looking out. The station wasn't empty. With him were delegations from a dozen species that had, 50 years ago, feared to even speak humanity's name. Kenji, now a commander, stood beside him. "It's beautiful, sir." Elias nodded. He wasn't looking at the new station. He was looking at what orbited it. The UNS Vanguard, the crystal geode, had been brought here, to the place where the war began. It was not a tomb. It was a monument. It orbited the new Aegis Point, a constant, beautiful, horrifying reminder of the price of order. Elias looked at the glittering, crystalline starship, home to 10,000 saved souls, and then out at the swirling Kylo's nebula. Humanity had proven that true strength wasn't the power to end a universe, but the courage to endure it. The galaxy had witnessed pure obliteration, but it was the refusal to use that power again that had truly shaken the stars. The silence of humanity was no longer feared. It was respected. It was the sound of a species holding its breath, weighing the cost and choosing, day after day, to be better than its own weapons. It was the sound of a question asked over and over into the void. What are we? And for today, at least, the answer was grace.